So who was he really, and how did that religion came about? Are you the Son of God? Well, you say I am. He denies it, because if he knows it, then he's going to be killed. But the Romans know who he is. Okay? And the Pharisees know who he is, because he knows the truth about the Judaic religion. So he writes a whole lot of scrolls. They write a whole lot of scrolls, and they bury them in various places around the place. One of those got discovered as the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was about 500 texts and all this. Another lot of them got buried underneath where the tomb of Solomon supposedly was in Jerusalem. Those scrolls were discovered by the Knights Templar in 1118 and taken to Scotland in 1307, and they are now buried beneath Rosslyn Chapel. And they tell the truth. They don't want the truth out there, so they're not digging them up. And if they do dig them up, you're never going to know about it. Now the question is, did Jesus die on the cross? There's a lot of evidence to support that he didn't. That he might have been crucified, but he got taken down off the cross because it was Passover and you weren't allowed to have people up on there. But the whole story of being putting in the tomb and resurrection, again, that's borrowed. That's borrowed. So there is a lot of evidence to suggest that Christ, or Caesarion, and Mary Magdalene, or his wife Mary Selena, left Qumran. His brother stayed preaching, who was James, who was the younger brother, and they went, and Mary Selena and the father, Joseph of Arimathea, Joseph, who was the foster father that looked after him, all went off through Greece, where they have connections with the Delphic people in Greece, that they went to southern France, and then they made their way across to Wales, southern England and Ireland, and where they passed on the information. Lots of evidence to support that. The Roman Catholic Church, however, developed because the Romans didn't want this information to come out, and they needed to form a religion to control the people again. So they created a religion out of the myth of this man, and to suppress the knowledge of who Jesus really was. They wanted to suppress the knowledge of what Caesarion knew, which was the ancient knowledge of the Tat Brotherhood and whatever. So it's a massive cover-up all the way through. And that sort of covers Christianity and all the offshoots of that which have happened. Muhammad was another megalomaniac who wanted to have control. He wanted to be important. He wanted to be important. So he created a religion. And in fact, he said that the whole prophecies of Jesus and all of these things were true. But he wanted to control things in a time when that area of the world was chaotic. And he wanted to be a powerful person to control everything. So he went around saying, I'm acting on behalf of the Prophet, I'm acting on behalf of Allah, and I'm killing people, and if you don't believe me, I'll kill you. Well, that's what all the religions have done. If you don't believe me, we're going to kill you. So you do that enough, people will start, out of fear, to believe you. So all of those main three religions were all created by megalomaniacs who wanted to control or big note themselves, and their way of doing it was to threaten everyone. And the core teaching is to love one another. Okay, that's the core teaching, because it comes from the highest aspects. And all the highest aspects have come through, all the way through. They come through love one another. But the minute you start ritualizing it, the minute you start controlling it with hierarchies of who can get to what and who can't, now you're bringing in fear. And it's using fear to control the masses. If you don't do this, you'll go to hell. If you don't do this, you'll get your head cut off. If you don't follow the laws exactly, you're going to go to hell, you're going to get stoned, you're going to do it. So now you're controlling people by fear, not by love, which is totally against the core aspect of all simple religions, which says to love one another. So all the stuff that's been added, which people say is the Word of God, is not the Word of God. It's the word of various people trying to put themselves up and control. And where does that come from? That's the Illuminati coming in and taking control and setting things up. And once you've created 2 or 3 religions, well, you can set them against one another. And that's why they created countries. Because now you can set countries against each other. And the thing is, the Illuminati create all the wars on the planet. And they've created them all since 1300. Okay? Because the Illuminati are the very first weapons merchants. They became so rich because of discoveries they made in the Crusades that they became richer than the state, richer than the church, and they were the power brokers in Europe. And they were the weapons manufacturers. So they sold weapons to everyone, and they're still doing it. The Illuminati supplied weapons to the Nazis and the Americans in the Second World War. And every single other war that you want to name, if you follow the paper trail, it all comes back to the same people were supplying weapons to both sides. So, of course, the more wars they are, the more money they make. And because they control the governments, what they do is they set the governments up against one another and they manufacture wars that aren't there so that they can continue to exploit the people, keep them controlled, because while they're fighting wars against one another, whether it's be religion or whatever it is, they can keep making money out of them and just exploit them. Exploit, 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 use, use, use. And that's why they think people are stupid. The greatest answer to that is define what God is first, and then I can tell you whether I believe in it or whether it exists. Because everyone has a totally different answer to that, of what God is. Some people see God as a separate being that is all-powerful, that they have to submit to. Some people don't even believe there's a God. And you say, well, how do you explain the whole universe and everything? They'll come up with science's explanation. And science's explanation is changing every 24 hours as they come up with new information. Science is something that continually proves itself wrong. That's what science is. And you only have to look at the history of science. 100 years ago, man couldn't fly. Impossible. Oh, now man can. More than that, we're going to but we can't fly to the moon, we can't leave the planet. Oh, we've done that too. Okay? Science continually proves itself wrong. And the more science goes down the track, the more they're realizing that what the spiritualists are saying is actually true. Because this universe does not exist in reality. It only exists in perceived reality. You know, you can watch a film. What you're watching now is just dots of light reflecting on your retina. I'm not real. I'm not real. I'm just dots of light. But if you perceive it to be real, then you will believe that I'm a real person telling you real things. But it's not. It's a perception. It's part of that choosing to experience. It's part of the illusion. Give you an image of a single-celled organism compared to the whole planet. That the single-celled organism is really only aware of its immediate environment. Well, we're the single-celled organism. And in fact, we're not even the single-celled organism because our earth is a consciousness. The same way that we think that our body is we're one consciousness. But every single cell in our body is an individual organism. It can function on its own. It has mitochondria and all these things in it. It's a separate consciousness. That's why you can take the heart out of something and it keeps beating, because it's still got a consciousness about it, and parts of the body will still move. They have this residual consciousness. But over the top of that, we have an imposed consciousness of ourself. Okay, so we control all of these individual things. We're the head of it all. Well, Gaia, Earth consciousness, is the same. It controls all the consciousnesses on the planet. And the sun, because the sun is 99% of the mass in our solar system, it is the overseeing consciousness. that controls all the planets and all the things in our solar system. Well, our solar system is a blip in the Milky Way galaxy. And the Milky Way galaxy has a consciousness that oversees all of the solar systems in our Milky Way galaxy. And our Milky Way galaxy is part of a local cluster of galaxies which has a consciousness. And that local cluster has a consciousness. And that local cluster is part of an even bigger and bigger and bigger. So where does it all end? Specifically relevant to us, there is a galactic federation, for want of a better term, which is a group of 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th dimensional existences who oversee what happens in this galaxy. And the overriding rule is that free will must apply, that no one is allowed to interfere with the free will of any being. Everyone is allowed to express whatever they want to express. That does not negate cause and effect. Okay, if you jump in a fire, you get burnt, cause and effect. If you kill someone, someone may retaliate against you. You know, there's cause and effect. If you break your arm because you do things, there's cause and effect. But it's not right or wrong. The higher consciousnesses have this guardianship to ensure that free will happens. But they understand, for instance, that the Drakos are playing the role they have to play as the bad guy, because we see ourselves as a good guy, and so they allow that to happen. It's more, the galactic federations are more funnels of consciousness. Does that make sense? That the information funnels in oneness. So even though it's oneness, there are levels of perception that you can choose to see things. Okay, sorry, I'm just getting images coming through. You can stand and look out of the window of the first floor of a skyscraper and you will see certain things. You can take the elevator up to the 10th floor and now you can see more. You can go right to the very top and you can see everything. So your perception will change, and what you can see and be aware of changes depending on where you shift your perception to. And all of these different dimensional levels and the federations are all levels of perception. And they allow the play to unfold at different levels. It's like a play within a play within a play within a play within a play. And it's all allowed to unfold at that dimensional level. And we've seen films of plays within plays. Well, that's a level upon a level upon a level. What was the one? Inception? Perfect example of how things work at those dimensional levels. Most definitely. Look, this is a really exciting time to be here. Some of these beings, they merely just have to think and they're here, because time-space does not exist to them once you get to those dimensional levels of existence. Some beings, though, are still in three-dimensional form and fourth and fifth dimensional form. That's why we have solid UFOs and we have light ships. There's difference. Some are three-dimensional, some are fifth-dimensional means of transport. So the more... the light ships, for instance, they need to travel at the speed of light, and the other ships, they use different physics to get here. So some of the beings who have a vested interest in what's happening on the planet or is about to happen, this is a really exciting time to be here. Okay, this is a very exciting time, not because of what's going to happen to the planet per se, because that happens fairly regularly, it's no big deal. But what is a big deal is the shift of consciousness that's happening. That's really interesting to watch. And they want to make sure that this human consciousness, which has been a byproduct of this hybridization, okay, the consciousness that you and I have is a hybridized form. So it's created something quite extraordinary and new. Emotions. Emotions that can generate music, can generate literature, can generate art. This is new. This is why the human race is something quite extraordinary, because there's the detrimental aspects of emotions, but there's also this other amazing stuff. So they want to come through because this is exciting, but they want to be careful that they don't allow a virus in that can affect all of these other things. So there's very much a possibility that the human race will be admitted to the next dimensional level, but with conditions, like a quarantine parole period.